Good afternoon, everyone on the Zoom and on YouTube Live and social media sites. We are excited to have this conversation today with Niren Chaudhary. First, let me say that I am Sreenivas Katragadda, President of Indo-American Community Services. On behalf of Indo-American Community Services, I am really excited to welcome you all to the final session of Leadership Conference. This year marks the 11th year since IACS, is also known as IACS, Indo-American Community Services, has been founded. IACS mission is to increase diversity at workplaces and to promote a leadership networking platform. We have annual leadership conferences, entrepreneurial conferences. We host all of these. We host women's leadership events, virtual career expos, student internship programs, and our young leaders programs and mentoring programs are designed to foster leadership and in the talent pipeline to join the ranks of the corporate leaders. Today's session is Leadership in New Normal. I am excited to introduce the moderator for the session, Ashish Kothari, partner at McKinsey. He leads McKinsey's West Coast hub for the consumer sector, helping consumer packaged goods companies, retailers, and packaging companies to accelerate their margin growth. Ashish holds an MBA from Booth School of Management from University of Chicago, and he's also serving as advisory board member for IACS. Now, it's my honor and privilege to welcome and introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Niren Chaudhary, CEO of Panera Bread. Niren Chaudhary was named CEO of Panera in May of 2019. Niren has more than 25 years of international corporate leadership experience in the food, retail, and hospitality industry. Niren joined Panera from Krispy Kreme, where he served as Chief Operating Officer and President of International Division. Prior to that, he spent 23 years at Yum Brands in number of positions, including serving as President of Yum India, most recently in the role of President of KFC Global, where he was responsible for 5,000 stores in 50 countries with $5 billion in revenue. Niren holds bachelor's degree in economics from St. Thomas Stephen College in Delhi, an MBA in marketing from University of Delhi, and also completed the advanced management program in Harvard Business School. Okay, now this is fun, okay? These are the stuff that you need to know if you're going to connect to Niren. He's very good singer and guitar player. He has his own band, a avid tennis and golf player. Here's something that you probably don't know, okay? He holds black belt in martial arts. So don't say that I didn't warn you, okay? Many of you might have watched the movie Sky is Pink. It is based on the real life story of Niren's daughter, Nisha Chaudhary. If you have not seen it, I would urge you to watch it. You know, it's an incredible, heart-touching, real story. I am extremely excited to welcome Niren Chaudhary to speak about leadership in New Normal today. Thank you so much. Welcome, Niren.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
So that's great. So you want to start out with the conversation on the New Normal leadership, and then you want to go to Ashish.
Sure. So I think what extraordinary times we're all living in. It's been a year certainly of incredible change and uncertainty. and has certainly tested me and my team to the fullest in the last year. If I rewind myself a year back, we had lost half of our business, and the business was in free fall, and we didn't know how deep the bottom would be. And also recognize that there was actually no playbook. Nothing in your life prepared you for something which was of this dimension. And I think what was challenging this time around, well, there were three crises happening at the same time. There was a health crisis that we all know. There was also a financial crisis unfolding, and also a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions in the US and all over the world. And because of these three-pronged crises, I think it made it a pretty overwhelming experience for any leader to get your head around and steward the company and your teams through it. And in some ways, I think this level of change and disruption is indicative of the new normal as we look ahead. I think a world which is increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and therefore the way in which we may have led in the past may not be applicable in the future because of just the speed of change and disruption. And I thought I'll just share with you some ways in which we approached the pandemic last year as a way of perhaps reflecting of what might be our leadership principles in the new normal as we look ahead beyond the pandemic. First off, I realized that when you are hit with something that is so unprecedented, the first thing is to remain calm. Take a deep breath and remain calm. It is very counterintuitive because many leaders would actually jump into activity mode, just randomly taking decisions, taking actions with the hope that they will be able to navigate the business successfully. But I think in reality, what is required is to first off do nothing, step back, and say what is truly important. And as we did that, we recognized what truly important was safety of our associates and customers, and also preservation and protection of our business. So identifying what is truly important. Next, I think, is to also align with your team. How will we make decisions? We know that we'll have to make tough decisions, but what will be the filter in the way in which we'll make decisions? So give you an example. We at Panera said, when we do safety and protection, we'll have to take some tough action. But as we take those tough actions, we will always do it with compassion, with heart, with empathy, with the utmost respect for the people who are impacted. We will behave as a family would by being there for each other. And finally, we'll also remember that this too shall pass, that we resist burning the furniture or damaging the business in irreversible ways. So we keep our perspective, do what is required, obviously, as leaders, but do it with humanity and compassion. And I think the third unusual lesson that I think on reflection came to me was that, when you have an event like we had last year and you have conflicting emotions, like certainly I did, on the one hand, you feel anxiety, fear, uncertainty. On the other hand, you feel more connected with your family, more committed to your communities, and more responsible for planet Earth. I think both were happening certainly to me. And when that happens, I think the third lesson for me was the importance of actually building trust, of stepping up and doing the right thing the right way for all of the stakeholders. I saw in that pandemic an opportunity to build trust, not just firefight, not just financial stewardship, to build trust, do the right thing for our employees, do the right thing for our customers, do the right thing for our community, to demonstrate to ourselves as leaders, as human beings, that the corporate world must step up and be part of the solution and not wait for the government or others to solve this for us. So I would say those three were some reflections in the new normal, that you must have clarity on what's important, filters on how you make decisions, and recognize the importance of building trust with all your stakeholders, not just your shareholders.
Beautiful, beautiful, Niren. I loved those 3 points you highlighted, and as well what you started with, right? Which is the ability to remain calm, to be able to actually step back versus jump right into the fray, right? Which is a natural tendency when under stress, right? Some
Yes.
of us just move in. So you talked about, in your last point, around building trust. What are some actions that you took personally to build trust?
Sure. So I'll give you some examples on all three: associates, customers, and community. So we were, confronting a terrible situation, a very tough situation. We had to obviously drive financial stewardship, protect cash, etc., that every business does. And therefore, we ended up furloughing about 35,000 people.
Wow.
Okay, so Panera is, we employ about 130,000, so we had to furlough 35,000 people. There were role eliminations. We had to cut salary from 25 to 50%. So these were very tough decisions that impacted so many lives. And as you know, when things like this happen, those who can afford it the least get impacted the most.
Yes.
That's unfortunately how it falls. So some of the ways in which we wanted to do it with empathy and compassion to build trust, I'll give you a few examples. One is that I got in touch with Walmart and CVS, who I read were hiring people, and we had an arrangement with them whereby they could hire our furloughed employees temporarily and give them back to us. So we put that arrangement in place. For all our furloughed employees, we gave them free family meals once a week for them to come back to our cafes, for us to have a chance to reconnect with them and make sure that they feel that they're not forgotten. We did the other actions that everybody else did, sickness pay, and if people had to stay at home, we would give them, paid time off, etc. We also engaged with Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey and had mindfulness, wellness courses available to all of our associates. So you can see, the level of compassion and humanity. And I was very happy that by about October, November, we were able to get all of our employees back into our cafes. And now with our business having fully recovered, we're actually trying to hire more people than we can find. So that's a good situation to be in. So those are some examples of trust building with associates. With customers, we recognized that customers were struggling to find everyday grocery. It happened to me. I was sitting with my wife and trying to order grocery delivered to the house. And they said it'll come to you after 5 weeks. These are high demand grocery items. And, I said that we have a potential write-off of millions of dollars of unsold products because our sales are plummeting. Customers can't find high demand daily items like dairy products and bread and vegetables and fruit. And our associates, have to be furloughed because we don't have business. So we thought that it'll be cool if we can set up a new business called Panera Grocery. And we sell up, our ingredients directly to our customers, and it would serve our associates and customers and shareholders. We set up that business in 2 weeks flat. And as you know, that's a very difficult thing to do, right, even under normal circumstances. But we moved very quickly, set up this new business, which was very appreciated. And then another example is only half of our 2,000 cafes had drive-throughs, and customers were looking for off-premise access to our cafes. So we set up curbside services in 1,000 of our cafes in 5 days, you know. And not only that, here's another cool feature. We were one of the first brands to start free Wi-Fi inside the cafe way back then, and then became an industry standard. So this time around, since the life had moved outside the cafe, we started free Wi-Fi outside the cafe. So people could be in a parking lot and could, basically log on to a Panera and do their thing. And then on community, we really stepped up to help those who were impacted the most. We were serving 50,000 meals to doctors and nurses in New York at the peak of the pandemic, for children who were reliant on school meals and didn't have access to school meals. We set up a very sophisticated school meals program in the state of Ohio with the USDA in partnership. And families who didn't have food to eat, we partnered with Feeding America and pledged and served 500,000 families during the pandemic. So these are some ways of, where we could have easily said, hey, listen, we have enough to do on our own. We're barely sort of surviving. Let's just manage and conserve our cash. We were quite sort of playing offense. And we said, how might we have a mindset of how can this be an opportunity for us to step up and do the right thing and build the credibility and the reputation and the regard for the brand and who we are. So those are some examples that come to mind.
Beautiful. I mean, I'm quite overwhelmed by the holistic, right, all stakeholders that you kind of kept front and center. And actions speak louder than words, right? And I think you, over the last 12, 15 months, truly, I can so imagine, 15 months through this thing, how as a company and as a family, as you said, you used the word family even when you talked about how you made decisions, how you're actually emerging stronger in many ways than actually when you went into the pandemic.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. I think so. When I came in 2019, initially I was very excited about coming to Panera with this dream job. What a fantastic company, incredible brand, and I always dreamt of being able to be part of a team like Panera. But when I came in, I realized I had big shoes to fill. Ron Shaich, who's the founder, was an incredibly talented man, and he'd led this company successfully for 30 years. I was the first outsider, Asian origin, and coming to the US, and all of my experience so far with, fried chicken, fried pizza, fried taco, fried donuts, coming into Panera Bread. And I think I found initially that, it was a pretty a tough act to follow. And I had to first off establish my own credibility, get people to really understand who I was before I could start transforming the company. And that was hard enough. And then I think if you, just when I was beginning to get my head around it, when we got hit by the pandemic, it could have derailed us. But here's the thing. We had the catalyst of how can we use the pandemic to accelerate our transformation? What we thought we will do in 3 years, how can we do that in 3 months? Because we have the permission to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it was with that mindset of how can we get stronger, we attacked the business. So let me give you a few stats on that reflect that pivot. So we became more off-premise. So before pandemic, we were about 60% off-premise. Now we're 85% off-premise. We became more digital. We were 35% pre-pandemic. We are now close to 50% digital e-commerce. And we launched some rapid fire innovation products like flatbread pizza and coffee, even though we were sitting behind Zoom screens and couldn't even really taste the product. Think about it. we launched new platforms, very quickly. So the team was unstoppable. And I think it was that energy that we had of really sort of stepping up and using this as a catalyst and as an opportunity to up our game. And we are emerging now from the pandemic. Our business is fully recovered. We are more profitable. We have a stronger brand, stronger team, stronger culture, and we're feeling very optimistic about what lies ahead.
Wonderful. Those are, you know, I do a lot of work with companies. I can tell you, you know, there's a rarefied, right, 10, 15% who are kind of, you know, in your shoes. And I think oftentimes the difference isn't the industry they're in. The difference isn't the business, you know, the size of the company. I think what I'm finding often is the difference is leadership. The leadership and the way, you know, you mentioned, even as you kind of navigated, when I came, you said they had to know me, right? Who I was, not what I was doing, what I had done, but who I was. So this notion of the inner life of a leader and how they see the world. Talk to me a little bit about, one, what is the inner life of Niren, and, you know, your experiences and your life journey that has shaped you into the leader that you are today?
Yeah, Ashish, thanks. That's a great question. I think I really believe that the job of a leader is to build trust. First and foremost, I think if you cannot do that, you can never lead. And I think trust basically is a function, I think, of having consistent behavior. And consistent behavior is a function of consistent thoughts, which in turn come from clarity of values. So if you have clear values, think of the metaphor of a tree. What is outwardly manifested in the form of the leaves are your behaviors. The trunk of the tree are your thoughts. And the roots that nobody can see are your values. Yeah. So your values drive your thoughts, drive your behavior. And behavior then shapes your character, and your character defines your destiny. So I'm a big believer that leadership is about building trust. And trust comes from having a strong character where you have clarity of values, and of course, competence. You have to be good at what you do. But both are important, character and competence. And therefore, I think whenever I'm in a new situation, I like to start there as who I am as a human, what I stand for, what are my values that you can expect that will shape how I think and how I show up. And you can hold me accountable to these values, by the way. And my core values that I have shaped over the last many years, as I think all of us have, first value of mine is around being congruent, which means what I think, feel, say, or do must be consistent all the time, you know? And it might make people uncomfortable sometimes, but I think therein lies the strength that you may like it, you may not like it, but you will always trust it, because what I think, feel, say, and do will be consistent. My second value is around courage, to stand up for what I believe in, but also to have the humility and courage to listen and understand other people. So it's a two-way courage, not a one-way courage. Third is around curiosity, that I want to be a lifelong learner. And the fourth one is around this resilience, you know, which is no matter what happens to you, get up and fight again, you know, and try and be the best version that you can be of yourself every single day. So that's what kind of shapes me. And so when I come into this role, or I'm starting any kind of a relationship, I like to surface these values, and I like to ask the other person, what are your values, and help me understand at a deeper level, you know, what's important to you, because this is what's important to me. I think if you connect at that level, then I think trust starts building. And once trust starts building, I think that's when change and enduring change can actually happen.
Wonderful. I love those. I love your analogy of the tree, right? Yeah, we often judge people based on behaviors. We actually don't know the underlying values and the thoughts that are actually leading to those behaviors, right? So even just that awareness and kind of, hey, what are you thinking? Where are you actually coming from? Is such a big unlock, right? And I love the values you highlighted, right? Congruence. And congruence so goes with courage, because it takes real courage to actually be congruent and say and feel, right? What you feel and what you think. I also loved your lifelong learner. I think I can see how, you know, that value served you well in these 15 months as we've navigated something that none of us have ever navigated in our lives, and hopefully don't have to again. But you know, the world is different, so wonderful. And then resilience. So Niren, how are you taking these values, right, and your leadership, and how are you actually scaling it? Because I can imagine you can't touch the 130,000 people. You have your leaders and the leaders below that need to touch them. And I can imagine everybody has different values and everybody might not have, right, many of these. So how are you leaving your imprint in shaping them to some extent in these molds?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And let me sort of link it to why it is important to have a common understanding of behaviors and values in any organization. I really believe that to win, you need to have a strategy, a plan to win, and then you need to execute it, right?
Yeah.
You need to have a plan and then execute it. Now, strategy is to do with intellect. Understanding, you know, what is the plan to win. Execution, however, is to do with heart.
Yeah.
Execution is about wanting to win, and therefore having the passion, the determination, the intentionality to do whatever it takes to win. And you want to win so badly that you can almost taste it. Now, if I were to ask you, and you're from McKinsey, you're a super smart guy, of the two things between strategy and execution, which one do you think is relatively more important?
Oh, I say, you know, execution eats strategy for dinner any day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so I'm with you. I think strategy is important, but execution is everything. And companies that win know how to execute. Now, the problem with execution is it's to do with emotion. It's about firing up the organization and wanting to win more than anybody else. And therefore, execution for me is a function of the right people doing the right things the right way. Right people are people who believe in what you believe in. Right things are the few things that truly matter. And right way is your culture or your behaviors or your values. And therefore, I'm a big believer that the big differentiator in companies that win and don't is culture, which is essentially, to me, culture is a feeling expressed through common language. That's what culture is. It's a special feeling expressed through a common language, and words are very important. And if in an organization you can have that common language and a common understanding of behaviors, you know, which are built on implicit values, but you're basically highlighting the behaviors, because behaviors are easy to observe, easy to coach. Values are very difficult to see. And that's why in the old days, people would talk about generic values, honesty, integrity, you know, and they don't mean anything because that's a value that leads to a certain behavior, right? So I think it's much better to articulate behaviors that are important for the organization, that define who the organization is. So since I've come along with my team, we've done a ton of work on essentially rediscovering the behaviors and the feelings that make Panera Panera. And we realized that, you know, Panera has a fantastic culture already. So this is not about revolution. It's a question of evolving that culture and to make it more future-proof and giving it a common language. So we have come up with something we call the Panera Way. In the Panera Way, we have 6 behaviors that we have identified, and we're in the process of institutionalizing across the organization through rituals, making sure that I lead by example, by integrating that in every single people process. And these 6 values are very intuitive. One is, you know, warmth for our guests. So everything starts with our guests. Then in that context, bold thoughts and brave action. So not being afraid to think big. Then this behavior of owning it, always taking accountability as a leader before you ask your teams. Then building winning teams that are collaborative. And the 5th one is Once you're winning, to take the time to inspire and celebrate. And the last one is to always be rooted in respect. And of everything that I've talked about, the two most distinctive values that I'm most passionate about that define Panera for what it is bold thoughts, brave actions, which basically means have the audacity to dream, have the curiosity to learn, and the courage to act. That's what that means. And make sure that whatever you do, everything is rooted in respect for each other, for the community, and for planet Earth. So those are some ways in which we're articulating, defining, and hardwiring our values that are important to all of us, that we have done, with a lot of listening and a lot of sort of uncovering of what truly makes Panera what it is.
That is terrific. I love that. I love the behaviors. It is so true. Often you see values, as you said, written with company shares of values, and people don't know how it translates into what you're supposed to do with it. But I really like how you've described, the behaviors, because you can observe them, you can hold each other accountable for them, and you're almost rewiring, right? You're like evolving the culture, and you're rewiring a new way in which you're going to execute together, right? Because behaviors are very specific. I really, really love that. As you're now all coming out of, returning to office, right? A lot of companies say returning to work. I think people haven't worked harder in the last 15 months than ever. So I find that return to work phrase in the press so quite amusing, actually. But as you're considering the return to office over the coming months, how are you approaching that, Niren? And how are you engaging with your workforce that's more office-based, right? You obviously have had people in the cafes all throughout, a big chunk of them. But how are you engaging with those who have been more office-based settings?
So at Panera, we always have the mindset of everything is an opportunity to get better. That's kind of the mindset, because we have this healthy sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo and constant desire to push ahead. So that's kind of the mindset. So when we had the pandemic and everybody went remote, we said, okay, this is an opportunity to completely gut our own office and create something that is like world-class, that people would love to actually go to and want to work there, So you don't have this thing of remote and on-site, etc. It's like people will be thrilled and jazzed and energized to just be in that environment and feel so productive and so engaged and so collaborative. So we have found a terrific new office space in the pandemic. We're in the process of doing that up. It's going to be a world-class facility with it's a high ceiling warehouse, modern, contemporary, natural light, no offices, collaborative spaces, digital and tech forward. We have like a food tasting kitchen right in the middle of it.
Cool.
And it's a very exciting and vibrant workplace that we are creating. And that'll be ready around the time that we're all ready to go back to work. So I think there's going to be a physical manifestation of the Panera that we wish to see, which reflects all the values that I talked about. It reflects our future and the ambition that we're dreaming of. And it's an aspirational place that people want to come to. And they therefore already become, the kind of stimulates collaboration, stimulates innovative and sense of enterprise. And then on the other side, I think we are fairly sort of also flexible on how much in terms of working from home or working at office. I think there we have relative flexibility. My mindset always is that I'm more concerned about the work rather than the hours or the location where you're physically based. And I think when you give people that respect, it's amazing that people actually step up and they outdo any expectation you might have. Because, we're all at the end of the day, I really believe people are essentially good, and
Yes.
people know what is fundamentally right. And when they need to be in offices with their team players and teammates, and when they don't. And I think we will find the right balance. But my energy and with my team has been around creating an absolutely, world-class experience of the future for Panera.
I love that. You just said it matter of fact, but I just want to restate what you just said, because that's not a view that unfortunately in our world many people hold, right? Not majority, which is people know what's right, and people are inherently good.
Yeah.
Right. And I can see, frankly, just with that statement, the journey that you all have been on and what's going to come out of this. Because people feel it too, right? People feel it. You don't even have to say, like I'm sure your teammates and colleagues feel that. Like when we see somebody in high regard, people rise up. They want to meet that expectation.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Look, one last question for you before I turn to see if folks who are listening to us have any questions. What advice would you have for some of the young leaders, who are joining us here and listening to you? I've taken so many notes. I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot. But any particular advice for the young up and comers from you?
Sure. I think I'd like to connect it to my own personal story. So it is to do with the loss of my daughter. I lost my 18-year-old daughter in 2015, Aisha, and there's a movie on her life called The Sky is Pink. So please do see that. I think Aisha's story is extraordinary because of how much she achieved in her short life. So she's a motivational speaker. There are 2 talks on YouTube on her. She's the author of a best-selling book called My Little Epiphanies, which is on Amazon. And like I said, there's a movie inspired by her. Now, in 18 years, she certainly achieved infinitely more than many of us achieve in a lifetime. And the reason she was able to do that was because of her attitude. And I think, to me, attitude is, everything. And there are 3 things that I've learned from her that I want to share with our listeners today. One of her attributes was around, courage. And she writes in a book, pick the highest mountain to climb on and the dullest of days to shine on. Meaning that whenever the days are dull and it's looking gloomy and you're feeling beaten up and you feel lost, just pick a mountain to climb on. And then do your very best to get to the top of the mountain. And when you get there, celebrate and then pick another mountain. And sometimes you may not get to the top of the mountain. That's okay. Just do your very best. And, she would say that we can't help the cards that life deals us, but we can certainly help the way in which we play those cards by jumping as high as we can from wherever we might be and being the very best version of ourselves by focusing on what we have control over, not on what's happening to us. That's what I call courage. Courage is about having the ability to focus on what you have control over, not what is happening to us. So that's the first thing I would say is courage. The second is, I think, a learning is around gratitude. And I think especially true during the pandemic, that how all of us can discover everyday miracles through the lens of gratitude.
Yeah.
If every night, I don't know how many of you keep a gratitude journal, or even think about it. Like before you sleep or when you wake up, the first thing is that say, okay, what are the things I take for granted but I should be grateful for? And you'll find everyday miracles, your relationships, the people that you love. We're also fortunate being where we are today compared to so many others who are suffering infinitely more. So let's be grateful and acknowledge what's going well and not keep dwelling on what's going wrong. And the third lesson is around giving. And Aisha writes in her book, if you can't change your own life, there is always someone else's. And, I have taken inspiration from that and said, well, I have suffered my loss, but how can I convert my pain into purpose and help those who need help? And, a lot of my desire to help during the pandemic or in my earlier roles comes from that source of desire of compassion to give, because I really believe that true happiness and fulfillment lies in the act of giving. So I would say courage, gratitude, and giving are important lessons. And finally, I think I would like to say that for all the young aspiring leaders and not so young aspiring leaders, this one is probably the mother of all lessons. And this is my own sort of reflection, which is, we talked about being a lifelong learner. There's one nuance to it, which is we must be prepared to learn and then unlearn and then relearn, because no learning lasts forever.
Yeah.
And I think that is slightly different compared to being a lifelong learner. Everybody gets that. But I have learned in my own life that you have to learn, and then what you learn, you must have the humility to unlearn and then relearn and unlearn, relearn, and continue on that journey, and always be open-minded and recognize that we know nothing, So those would be a few thoughts I wanted to share.
Thank you. I love it. Your last comment reminded me of, say every day, see the world from the eyes of a beginner.
Yeah.
Right. So you have obviously a lot of experience, but you see that every day is a different day. Every day is unique. And starting the day with, frankly, your second point of like starting every day with looking around and seeing all that's actually good in our world and how much abundance we swim in and being grateful for that.
Yeah.
Now, like you, right? I started a gratitude practice about 4 years ago, and I could attest to how fundamentally it's rewired my brain.
Yeah.
Right. The highs don't, the lows don't seem as low. The highs don't seem right. Seem higher because you're always like, wow, what did I do to deserve this? Right. Versus I deserve it. Thank you. Thank you, Niren.
Thank you.
I wish I had a chance to meet your daughter. She was definitely wise beyond her ages and really lots of wisdom in her words. So thank you also for sharing some of her thoughts. There's a question from one of our attendees, which is around how was your journey, Niren, as an Indian leader, as a person of color?
Yeah. So, I was born in India, grew up in Delhi, and then I joined Yum Brands and worked with Yum for 23 years. As part of that, I was leading the business in Europe. So my first sort of stint was I was the general manager of a business in Holland. A culture can not be more different than that.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the language. I speak pretty good Dutch. And then I was given Germany. So I went and ran Germany. I picked up German as well and ran that. Then I was sent to the UK and I was part of the leadership team there. Then I came back to India and ran all three brands in India. And then I went to the US as the global president, and then to Krispy Kreme, and then CEO, etc. So I feel that a couple of things I realized. One is that people are more similar than dissimilar wherever you go. They might look different, they might speak different, but deep inside, all of us are wired up the same way. As human beings, we all want love, recognition, compassion, understanding. And if you're able to connect at a human to human level, I think you can get along with anybody in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Second is to have a mindset of, I am the person coming in, I have to adapt and not the other way around. I have to come in with humility, with a desire to understand, to be understood. I have to demonstrate my eagerness and curiosity and respect by trying to learn the language, by learning to appreciate local customs, by enjoying the local cuisine, by really understanding the culture in which I'm going. And the third one is on the same mindset is lead others the way they want to be led, not how you want to lead them. What that means is that to be culturally sensitive enough to know how you need to communicate, engage, and interact and inspire different people who might have stylistic differences. So, for example, when I was in the UK, I'd just gone fresh out of India, and I was not used to the subtlety of the English language. And when my boss took me aside and said, "I'd like to have a quiet word with you," I didn't realize that he wanted to give me a bollocking, and it was not to deepen a relationship with me, you know. Or if he said to me, "I think the presentation was decent," meant it was crap, you know. So I had to pick up those nuances of language. When I went to Holland, I realized that it's a very egalitarian society, and my team, everybody wanted to be consulted. I had to ask everyone, "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" And then decide and lead by consensus. I tried to do the same thing in Germany, and people thought I was such a weak leader. They said, "Why are you asking us? You tell us what needs to be done. Don't ask us," you know. So these two things of people are the same, you know, you have to adapt, and third is lead people how they want to be led. Another funny story I think in the US that our audience can relate to very quickly is when I came into Panera, same mindset, you know, that I must adapt, etc. I'm going to St. Louis to do a town hall with 1,000 people, and I'm quite nervous. It's my second day, and people are wondering, who the hell is this guy? And somebody, my CFO tells me that, "Don't worry, the Blues won last night, so they're in a good mood." I had no idea what the Blues were. So I go up on stage and I say, "I'm a bit nervous, but I believe you're all in a good mood because the Blues won last night." The crowd erupted and they said, "Wow, this is great." And it kind of eased the tension and people thought it was fantastic. I go to Boston the next day, I try the same trick. And I tell Boston, I believe you're all in a good mood because the Blues won last night. And somebody came to me and said, "That's wrong. It's the Bruins out here. What are you talking about?" So I've had my comical moments and run-ins, but I think this mindset of also, I think, you know, learning the language was a big one.
Yeah.
I always try and learn the language. So I speak Dutch, I speak German, and I think language is the window to connection. You know, I think when you know the language, even if you don't speak it very well, people really respect the fact that you respect the culture.
Yeah,
you know?
You're trying.
Yeah. So I would say those would be some of my lessons, that if you always take the accountability personally and treat others the way you want to be treated. I've been very fortunate that I've had nothing but, you know, fantastic relationships, enduring friendships across all of these nationalities and countries that I've worked in.
Beautiful, thank you. So there another question for you. This is from Ramesh, and he said, you know, is it important to show compassion to your competition?
Your competition?
Yes.
I certainly think so. You know, I'm an abundance mindset kind of guy. I feel that the pie can keep growing. I don't think of the pie being finite. And in fact, you know, many of these guys like the RBI CEO, Jose, or Todd Pregnor with Wendy's, the Yum CEO, you know, David Gibbs, and Brian Nichol at Chipotle, and et cetera, et cetera. All of these people are, you know, are good friends. I think are people that I learn from, I speak with, exchange ideas with. So no, I don't think about, you know, competitors in that lens. I'm just, yes, I think of them to benchmark and to see where we are. I think of them to get inspired and learn from, but I spend 99% of my energy on myself and my brand and my business.
Beautiful. You know, you bring an example. There's a lot of these organizations that are called, teal organizations, like Patagonia is one of them, Birdstork is another one of those. And you see that, right? Which is when you see the world from a place of abundance, you see competitors as co-conspirators into actually living and delivering on your purpose and how you're making a world a different place, right?
Yeah.
And you learn from them. So yeah, I love that. And then one more question before I pass it to Sreenivas. And this one is a question on, can you, we talked a lot about successes. We also, you talked about something that is personally, would have been a very hard time, right? In your personal life, with your daughter. Talk to us a little bit about, failures in your career, things that didn't actually go well, and what were some of the learnings you took from those?
Boy, I've had, more than my share of failures. I think when it happens, I have to say it really hurts. So I think sometimes people say, "Oh, embrace failures." I mean, it really hurts. It's like a kick in the pants.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, I believe that failures teach you a lot more than success does, because you feel it more deeply. And I think if however hard it is, if you step back and say, okay, how can this actually make me better? And resolve that you will never, ever do that again. And somehow, find the courage to keep moving, it does end up strengthening you. So I think I've had, a fair set of failures. And I think this learn, unlearn, relearn is a reflection of one such realization. When I was running India, for example, I ran it for 10 years. And in the first 5 years, it went up like a rocket. And I thought I had kind of nailed the playbook. And I just kept repeating, copy, pasting, repeating. And, nothing lasts forever. And the business had grown more complex, customers had changed, competitive environment was different, and so on. And the business started moving the other way. And, I I refused to change what I was doing. And I think, as they say, that, a definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, And it was only in hindsight I recognized that, I should have actually stepped back and said, hey, this is not working. So what do I need to do differently? Sounds so obvious, but sometimes we are prisoners of our own success, and we think what we got right once will be right forever. And that's, rarely the case. So I learned from that, I will always make sure that I'm, always asking the question, okay, is this still truly applicable, whatever might be in front of me?
Thank you. So we're about 4 minutes, Sreenivas. There's a lot more questions, but we have only a short amount of time. So let me pass it back to you to take us through closing.
This is a great way to ask Niren to come back again, and speak about it, right? So we have more listeners even from YouTube and all in posting questions. But in our time we have, and we wanted to kind of close this. And really, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Niren. That was very inspiring and compassionate, insightful discussion. Thank you, Ashish, for moderating and also highlighting some of the important points what Niren spoke. In closing, right, I want to reiterate on our team who's been really focusing on some of these efforts, realizing India is going through a devastating time with COVID surge. Indo-American Community Services supports 3 organizations in their effort to help patients battle COVID-19. And these are the 3 organizations we would love our listeners and our members and organizations to support. Give India Foundation, Seva International, India Development Relief Fund. And these are the organizations who are doing tremendous work at this time. We would love all of you to support and generously donate to these organizations. Just on a quick note on that, we had Norson CEO spoke in the beginning, and their employees are very motivated and supporting this relief effort, where the Northern Foundation is doubling on their contributions to these. So thank you for all of you generously supporting this. We also want to thank our corporate sponsors, ITW, Dover Corporation, USG Corporation, Nordson, Sunoco, and Champion X, and you are always been there for supporting our ISCS mission. We also want to thank many organizations that have been supporting throughout this conference and everything that we do. McKinsey, Voya Financials, Verizon Media, SLR USA, Conagra, Aflac, Global Logic, and newly added to that is Panera Bread to us. Bring a big thank you to all our audiences. We have more than 500 professionals kind of registered for this whole conference from 150 diverse companies across 35 states in USA, also Canada and UK and India. And so it's a great success on this. On behalf of Indo-American Community Services, I want to thank our advisory board members who've been there and supporting throughout. And big thank you and kudos to the organizing team, amazing organizing executive team, who have done everything to make this a big success. Sreenivas Rachamadugu, Vidisha Rudra, Chakravarti Radha Pragada, Amisha Patel, Ratnavel Kanaka Sabapati, Anand Chari, Naveen Punati, Alpesh Gaur, Ramesh Garpati. It's a big thank you to all of them who have made this successful. And again, thank you so much, Niren. We really love the talk that you have given today, and we're very fortunate to have our listeners to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Again. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you, Ashish. Thank you.
Loved our conversation. Thank you, Niren. Take care.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.